Adoption Lounge. I'm Amanda.
And I am Katie. Thank you so much for joining us again today. We have a special surprise.
We have two special surprises.
Yes. I was just talking about the dog. But also, our guest is equally special. But I'm really excited. Amanda is fostering her very first dog through Mobile Mutts, and they are who I foster through. And she has an obsession with Frenchies, and she saw that they were, I told her we were going to be having an incoming Frenchie, and she's like, oh my gosh, you have to foster that dog. And I was like, no, you foster that dog. I'm not going to foster a dog just in case you adopt, which she definitely is.
This is Marley.
Not to spoiler alert, but like I'm ready for my close-up. She's so good.
She's so cute.
She's a bit of a snorter, so if it gets too loud,
I'll hand her off.
We'll hand her off. But for now, she was just really excited to meet Lindsey.
She got to meet everyone at the office on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Everyone loved her.
Mm-hmm.
That was her big debut. This is her,
yes,
call to stardom.
Yes, this is your moment, Mar.
Yep.
So, Marley Potato. Shout out to my husband, who feels her name should be Potato. So who are we talking to today?
We are talking to Lindsey. I'm super excited. She adopted her son Emerson, and we're gonna hear about her journey.
Yeah, we are so excited to hear your adoption story. Thank you, Lindsey, for being with us today. And you adopted Emerson with your wife, Lo, right?
That's correct.
Awesome. So tell us, how did you decide on adoption?
Well, first I have to share that we do have a dog named the Potato.
Shut up. Are you serious?
Yes. And she's a mini Australian Shepherd. She's a red merle. And
I have a mini Australian Shepherd red merle. I'm sorry. I shouldn't interrupt you. I was just so excited.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
I love that so much.
Yeah. We adopted her, and her owner had lost their housing, so he was living in his car with her. And he's actually like a close family member of us now. He comes to visit the Potato all the time. And he lives in Pennsylvania, and we live in Louisiana. And he has come here to see this dog.
That's amazing. I love that. Ours was a breeder release like Marley. So she's not very social. She's kind of a lunatic, honestly. But we always say she has pretty privilege because she's the prettiest dog ever. But she is,
Yep.
a little bit.
We say the same thing.
Emma.
Yeah. Emma.
Thank God she's attractive.
Yeah, right?
I love that.
Oh my
How old
gosh.
is she?
She's probably 8 or 9 now. We've had her for about 4 years. Mm-hmm.
That's really awesome.
I
That's
love
a nice,
her name.
That's
The
a nice
Potato.
story. I like that it's the Potato. Like,
Yeah.
It's like more official, you know.
like her government name.
Exactly. So yeah, I thought that's a fun coincidence. So
That
What
is
led- what was the question? What led us to adoption?
Yeah, or whatever you want to talk about is fine. I mean, or if you can hear our questions over Marley's snorting.
You know what's really weird is I always knew that I would adopt, and I like don't know how or why, but when me and my wife started dating, we met at work, so we worked together, and we talked about having children like early on because we were friends, and I was like, I want to adopt, and she was like, oh, interesting.
Just like, thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah. And so I don't know how I knew. I just always knew. And I think during that time, early on in our relationship, we had another gay couple that we are pretty close with, and they were going through IVF. And they were talking about like the emotional toll that it was taking. And we watched what they were going through and the struggles that they had, and then the financial commitment of that as well. I was like, I can't do that. I couldn't see myself going through what they were sharing, which was really fascinating because we did see a very well-known IVF doctor. And then literally within 10 days, COVID happened.
Oh,
And we were
that's
like-
terrible timing for something like that
Yeah.
too. Like
Yeah.
how tricky. I'm so sorry.
So then we were like, scrap that whole thing. Like, there
Yeah.
are
Never mind.
children,
Just
like,
kidding.
there are children that need parents. Like, and for me, it was my desire to be a parent, right? So, like, it was a natural choice because I really wanted to be a mom. Like, my desire
Yeah.
didn't like live with pregnancy, right? I never was like,
Yes.
oh, I saw myself being pregnant. Like, I never had that attachment to parenthood, right? And so for me, it was a very easy journey. Like, it was a natural, I want to be a parent, and how that happens doesn't matter to me. I just want to be a mom. And I think me and my wife are like great moms, so we should be someone's mom, right? Like, we're amazing.
Yes.
So
I love
Of
that.
course.
My mom was the exact same way. She just had no interest because when she found out they couldn't do it biologically, she's like, "All right, well, adoption it is. I just want to be a parent."
Yeah.
And that's
And,
such a
like,
good point too.
for us, like, it was natural because regardless if we did IVF, we're in a same-sex marriage. Someone's adopting, right? Like,
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
There's no
So-
way for it to biologically be both of yours.
Well, and if it was
Right.
important to one of you to carry, I can understand wanting to pursue it. But
Sure.
if not,
Yeah.
then who cares?
no.
That's awesome.
No.
So how did you start that journey then? How did you start kind of researching and looking into how to even start? I've heard the
Yeah.
research can be really tricky.
Yeah.
You know, for us, it's really funny. I'm like, me and my wife are completely different. I'm like, get 3 quotes, talk to 3 different people, weigh out the options, right? My wife is not like that. Once she knows, right? So,
I'm 100% like that. I think
Yeah, you
you're a bit more
I'm
pragmatic.
like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like low. I'm like, I feel it. Let's go. Vibes all the
Yeah.
way.
like,
I'm not usually wrong though. So
Yeah, the feeling's always right.
right. But I want to make sure we're getting a return on our investment. I want to read the reviews, right?
very rational. I understand.
Right. I need facts to back up my feeling. I also have feelings.
Right.
Sounds
Right.
tedious.
Yeah.
Give me the data. So, you know, I think you hear a lot of stories of like, it's hard for gay people to adopt. There are like laws against gay people being parents. And like, I guess I'm very naive. Like, that's kind of odd to me that would even like be a thing. And so to overcome
odd.
that, I was like, adoption agencies for gay people. I mean, like, let's just move in that direction, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's not
Cut out the middleman here. No
Yeah.
questions.
So that was kind of our approach. We did talk briefly about foster through the state.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like the most brief conversation we ever had. That is not something that my wife was interested in at all. Like, we're not looking.
I honestly
like,
sometimes-
for us.
Yeah, well, and I hear sometimes more discrimination stories from families who are coming from foster care. I mean, at
Right.
least private adoption agencies usually just put it out there
Right.
from the start.
Right. So we met with Lifelong, and like, just out of the gate, he was like, we're the best and here's why. And like, went through the facts. He was like super welcoming. So then because we were in the adoption process, we actually ended up getting married before our wedding, like via,
Like the courthouse.
well, not even, you couldn't even go to the courthouse, like via mail-in.
that's right.
Like,
You'll mail in.
a piece of
You'll
paper that
take a wedding picture by the mailbox.
You're like, this is us putting it in the mail. Oh my gosh, that's wild.
So-
I mean, not very many people have those stories though, so I feel like it's all for the plot, right?
Right. So like, it was like wild because our wedding kept getting moved and like just felt like super genuine. And then he took like all the guesswork out of it, right? So I get off the phone, like, and me and my wife are like feeling super jazzed, right? We got the pamphlet in the mail and like, bless my family, right? But I showed a member of my family, I don't want to name her in case it gets shared, but like, I sent a
We're not that
picture.
famous, but it's okay.
I sent her a picture, right, of the front of the adoption catalog, and she goes, "Is that your baby?" I'm like, "No, dear. That's not, no, that's cute, though. It's not work like that." Like, we had the catalog, all the paperwork, right? We got off the call, and I was like, "All right, let me see who else is out there." And my wife was like, "That's ridiculous. Like, why would you do that?" Like, people are the best, and he just walked us through why they're the best, and that's the end of it. And let's just do it. And he gave us like, he walked us through like the loan process, literally.
Yeah.
Everything was completely there, and it took away that, like, I think there's like this thing, like, when I was young, I'm like, rich people adopt, right? Like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think people think that it's like this big thing that is really hard to overcome or really stressful. And it's not like that, what we experience with Lifelong, right? Like, we experienced that it was very easy. We had the support through the entire process, and we had guidance. And like, I think that if people knew more about adoption, like that they had the support and resources to do it, like if they of course go through the process and meet the qualifications. But I think it can be misunderstood as like this big scary expensive thing, and while it's not free, you know, you can finance loans for everything, even adoption, right? And
I
so
agree. I totally agree with you. And I think also if you set a goal, and I don't mean this to ever be reductive or anything, but I do think that I've had families who are like, I can't qualify for a loan right now, that will literally work on themselves for like a year and then come back to me and be like, all right, we've worked really hard and we're ready to go and now we can get a loan. And I just am always so impressed by that, because I feel like those are the people that were like, this is what we want, so we're going to make it happen for ourselves. And I just love that.
Yeah, there was a time I was doing a meeting, and this guy, when we went over the cost, the husband had like a, oh wow, you know, I think he had no idea.
He's like, I didn't read anything
He was
yet.
like, wow, and he was like, that's a lot, and she was like, really? Because you didn't say that when we bought your car last week
right.
and financed your car, and he was like, we'll get back to you by the end of the week.
Right.
I just love hetero couples and their arguments, because
I know.
I'd be the same way probably with my husband. I'd just be like, oh, we can do this right now in the meeting.
Right, and that was the thing, right? It's as simple, and I hate to like break it down, but it's as simple as a car loan, a boat loan, a home, you know, fix your house loan. It's really that simple. You can go to your bank, like, you know, we went with who Lifelong recommended ultimately for certain reasons, but we did go to our regular bank too and talk to them about the loan, their terms, and you know,
that's a great thing to do. I always say shop around, make sure you're getting the best interest rate. And
it's a lot of 401k loans now. That's really common.
I love doing 401k loans, but you never want to feel like, I'm not trying to say that, you know, you're paying for a car like a baby, but I mean, there are a lot of services involved that you just don't have support for, and people need to show up every day to work.
When you need a lump sum of money, a loan is there.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about what it's for. It's just about the
accessibility of it.
Exactly. It was like, and for me, knowing what people spend, people can go deep into six figures in IVF, and I'm not going to do that, right? I'm not going to do something. I can't invest in money like that without a guarantee, right? And I really like leaned into our faith. I knew that we were always meant to be Emerson's parents, and so that I knew Emerson would come to us. Like, it was a matter of God's time. And like, now I can say that, like, in the process, it was so, the wait is like the worst part. And like, I remember like the calls with the Lifelong, like every 3 months to check in and talk. Like, my wife couldn't come to the calls anymore because she was so emotionally exhausted by them, right? Because okay, this is normal. And she's like, but we're not normal, we're amazing. And it's like, what? So it was like, the wait was like so challenging, and we had been presented with, like, we went through the stork drop thing, we did the approval, we had a nursery set up, right? Like, we, like, at the very end there, right before we got picked, we pulled off all restrictions because we had checked everything. Me and my wife live like a super boring life. We drink water and go to Disney. Like, that's it. We don't drink alcohol. We're like super boring. And so, you know, our like wish list was like, no alcohol, no cigarettes, like nothing. And I think that's because we both were married. Both of our spouses were addicts, active.
Yeah, very like triggering.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be as far away from that as possible, and so did my wife. And my wife and her ex-wife, right? My wife had stepchildren with her ex-wife, so she really saw the impact of addiction with children involved and how that shifted the family. Thank God me and my ex-wife didn't have children. But because of that experience, we were like, no, we don't want any of this. And I remember one of the last calls with Lifelong, and our coordinator said, I'm going to be real with you about when people are normally in this situation and the circumstances that revolve around that. And was like super clear that most people that you recall, and I thought about this, like, yeah, actually most people that I do recall hanging out with somebody who was smoking cigarettes before they found out they were pregnant, right? Like,
right.
It's like we make it this big scary thing when, like, in reality, like, many people can be consuming alcohol or something before they verified that they were pregnant.
Well,
right?
sure.
Oh yeah, you don't even share a bloodstream with the fetus for the first 6 weeks of pregnancy for
Right.
that reason.
So,
I assume that's what God had in mind anyway.
After that call with Lifelong, I said, my wife didn't come to the call. She said, do whatever God tells you to do. And I said, take off all the restrictions for everything.
Yeah.
And I was so scared.
And I love that though, because it's a leap of faith, right? There's little leaps of faith along the way, but you got to go with your gut, even if it's scary.
Yeah, I said, take it down. Take down everything. Take down any preferences. No preferences on gender, no preferences on race, no preferences on alcohol use, tobacco use, marijuana use, opioid use, nothing. And then so I get off the call and my wife goes, what'd you say? So I said, take it down. Take it all down. I didn't think you were going to say that. And I said to her, like, I agree with you. I believe in God, and I believe that we're going to be Emerson's parents. So no check mark or restriction is going to change that. Like, that's the honest to God piece of it. And so during this time, right, everyone in my family, like my family and my wife's family, have zero experience with adoption, okay? But everybody has feedback on adoption, right?
Yes.
Of course.
It's like parenting. Everybody has an opinion.
Everyone has opinion. Yep.
Right? Every interaction with our family, you know what you guys should do? You know what you need to do, right?
You're like block.
And you're like, actually, I didn't ask.
Yeah,
so that's
block
funny.
you sounds like what I need to do.
Right, like thank God you stepped in here. The adoption agency has no idea about this, right? Like, come on. Right?
What would we do without this helpful suggestion?
My gosh.
And, like, I guess people genuinely think they're being helpful, right? But it was during COVID, right? So people would send us, right? You would hear those stories like 3 children lost their parents to COVID, right? People would send us this links, and they'd be like, "You guys should adopt
like, look at these available children." Oh my god! Yikes!
And we're like, "That's not how it works, right?" And like everyone in our family, right, had an opinion because they know, but none of them were ever adopted or have been involved in adoption.
Right.
They all know, right? So then they gave us this really interesting feedback about how, okay, so prior to removing all the preferences, Lifelong said, put up a video. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, I was nervous to put up a video, and so was my wife, of the inside of our home, because that's a lot to put up a video of the inside of your home on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
My ex-wife is a former or addict or whatever, right? And her ex-wife is also an addict, right? Like,
right, you don't want to give out information. Sure.
Right. So Lifelong says you have to put the video up. Like, that's what expectant mothers, they want to see that. And wouldn't you want to see that? We're like, okay, fine. So we put up the video, we remove preferences. Then my family decides that we're going to go there for some holiday before Labor Day. It's not Labor Day yet because we get picked on Friday of Labor Day weekend. So some prior holiday, like Cinco de Mayo or something. And they tell us...
Lindsey, you're so funny.
I love that. I'm like, should I be a comedian?
I'd be laughing through this whole interview. I just find you incredibly amusing.
Comedian needs to be on your resume for sure.
You're just, I like your shtick.
Okay, I'm a senior director of HR, which is like...
Oh, so you gotta be fun.
Right. You gotta laugh
really
every day,
bad.
otherwise you'll go hide
My
under your
dad
desk
was as
and
well.
cry.
My dad, you remind me of my dad a little bit. My dad's also an HR director for many years before retiring.
Oh, it's wild out here. So I'm literally having the time of my life every day. So we go
Okay,
there.
so I'm sorry, what happened?
So we go there and they know why we haven't gotten picked. So we're almost at the average, right? I think the average time from not start to finish, right? That was like over 2 years, but the average time from going live, right? That whole home approval, all of that, that takes like 6 to 9 months. All your medical paperwork, all your physicals. So you can get a lot out of the way before you even go live, right? So there's a lot to do while you're waiting. So
Yeah. They're
we
a lot
get all
more
that
efficient
out of
with
the
that
way.
now, but yeah.
We're live and they go, "You're not getting picked because your video's too personal. It's like weird."
It's like weird.
It's like, you guys should change it.
Wow.
Okay. So I think that I had like, so here's the deal. We live in New Orleans, right? So I put my favorite show is Swamp People. It is. I think it's hysterical that people go out in infested waters and hunt these things for fun. It is. Well, my family thinks that people are judging us because of that. I shouldn't be my authentic self.
Yeah.
They may think you're swamp people.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
and that's so funny because we give the opposite advice, obviously, but that's really funny that they're like, this is going to be interpreted weird.
Right. They're like, don't be real honest, Lindsay. Like, tell some lies. So then they tell us that it's creepy that we show the nursery.
A lot of expectant moms want to see that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing to show in the
I don't.
video.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to put one together, but I definitely think if you have one, why not show
Or
it?
even
It's
the
never come
space that
across
will
wrong.
be the nursery.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we put the nursery in the video, right? We did a house tour. We put the nursery in the video because we had a nursery because we were on the stork drop list. Right? So we had to be prepared. So we're about to change this video, okay? Because my family, I can't get away from their opinions on the matter. So we're about to change the video. Labor Day weekend. Labor Day weekend, on Friday, we got called. My mother-in-law was visiting us, and we were going to this really fun, like, Amish market in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And Lifelong came across my phone, but because I work in HR, I think everybody's calling me for work for a problem, so I forwarded the call. My wife calls me 10 minutes later. "We got picked," right? I'm freaking out, okay? We're like super excited, freaking out. Our birth mother has since passed away. And
I heard that. That's so sad.
it's literally like the biggest loss I've ever experienced in my life. It's the most profound.
And that was recent, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Was that in
our
like
birth-
July?
Yes, we found out that on the 1st of July that she passed away.
Yeah.
And she had been passed. I had been trying to get a hold of her.
Oh, okay.
But she passed away, I think, on March 7th. And we talked regularly, right? So I'm like,
so worried.
yeah, I'm texting her, "Are you okay? What's going on with the family?" Right? And I'm very well versed on dealing with people who are in active addiction. My ex-wife was an active drug addict. And the drug of choice was the same that my expectant birth mother was on. So I felt super comfortable in this dynamic.
Yeah.
And so when she would disappear for periods of time, I knew things would be off, right?
Right.
But it also is not uncommon, right? So it wasn't uncommon for us to not speak. Maybe I text her 2 or 3 times and I don't hear back for 10 days, right?
Sure.
But you figure you eventually will.
But like different addiction patterns depending on, like, I understand. It's, yeah.
So it was.
So how did you find out?
We were in the Outer Banks for our family vacation. My wife and I went to get coffee, and we were thinking about entering Emerson in this Toddler of the Year contest with Hasbro toys. So
It's such a parent thing.
he actually is in. He has to make first place by tonight at 7 to advance. He's in 4th right now.
Can we
But,
vote?
Send the link, please.
Yeah, send the link.
Yeah.
We'll vote.
Oh
This
yeah,
won't
I'll
go up in time for us to solicit votes from other people, but
But
definitely,
we will definitely vote.
Yeah, We got you.
I'll email it to you as soon as we hang up. Emerson's amazing. So
Perfect.
we're
I'll send it to
talking about
all staff.
Yeah, we'll all vote.
Oh, thank you. Okay, it's getting down to the wire. So we're talking about it, right? So I also have a good relationship with the extended family of my birth mother, right? I have a great relationship with the mother. We've been in their home. I've met both of her parents. I've also met her children. Our birth mother has children.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's
So
so sad.
I'm like chasing her down via text, right? My birth mother via Facebook, right? So I send her a Facebook message. I'm getting worried. I haven't heard from you. Is everyone okay? And it comes back like user not available. And I've never seen that happen before. So I tell my wife, she died. She did, right? And my wife's like, don't speculate. I'm like, no, this is bad. So I message her mom because we're close. How
Right.
are you? How is our birth mother? How are the boys? Right? Days go by, we pack up, we go to the Outer Banks on vacation. The first day we wake up to get coffee for our vacation, we're walking out of the coffee shop. I look down and Emerson's maternal grandmother, her mother, our birth mother's mother, said, I'm sorry to tell you that Sydney passed away a couple months ago.
It's devastating.
It was like the worst. Like, I'll never forget it, right? The experience. And then it was like, I've never lost anyone close to me. And so it's like the most profound loss I've ever experienced, right? Because for me, this person I hold with high regard and changed my life. I owe the life that I have to my birth mother today, right? And to other people, right? They viewed her differently because she was in active addiction, right?
Yeah, but you saw a
It-
person who is struggling.
And it's really hard because she wrote Emerson a note and her parents found it and so they sent it to us. So I have that and I feel like super grateful that we have that. She talks about the moment that he was born and how like as soon as he was born he like smiled and she said like I'm forever grateful that we had that moment together. And then she said, like, I hope you'll understand one day why I chose your mom's, and one day I'll tell you about it. And so I feel sad and, angry that those moments have been stolen from Emerson. That's how I feel because,
Yeah.
I want him to be able to have answers to questions that she has, and those are personal things that only she has, So
Right.
it's
Like
like
lots of layers of grief to this because it's like you're grieving because she was someone in your life that you cared about, but also on behalf of Emerson.
It makes it so much bigger when it's something that will affect your
Yeah,
child too, because
absolutely.
it's a loss for them too.
yeah.
But it's so special that you have that letter, that you have something, and then you got time with her too, so and you got to know her and her family, so it's nice that you'll be able to share those memories with Emerson too.
Well, Lindsay, if you don't mind me asking, what was it like getting to know her before Emerson was born? I mean, did you kind of hit it off right away? Did you communicate a lot before the delivery?
Yes, like it was so interesting. It happened on Labor Day weekend, Friday of Labor Day.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Yeah, and she wasn't due until
Were you like, I told you the video was
November.
good?
Yeah, right, exactly. I was like, don't
Yeah.
give me feedback.
Did you choose me because of the video?
You're like,
Yes
please
or
say
no?
it was because of swamp people. Thank you.
So they told us, right, when they called my wife, they have like limited information, so they talked about the medication that she was on that is concerning. And then we were like, yeah, we're comfortable with that. I mean, my wife was like, are you comfortable? I'm like, yeah, my ex-wife was on the same drug. So I feel super confident and comfortable with this. And she picked you because of the Christopher Robin Winnie the Pooh nursery because she too had a Winnie the Pooh nursery when she was a baby.
Oh, I love that connection.
I love that so much. And it comes with the added layer of telling your family that they were wrong.
Yes.
Like,
Right. And
Now
I
that I
always
have to
love
my
that.
nursery, you
Right.
jerks.
Right. So, it was like weird because she was actually due in December. Emerson was premature, so he was born over 5 weeks premature.
oh, what was that
So-
like? My son was early too.
It was like the most terrifying. Like when he was born and they were like, "You guys are going to the NICU." I was like, "What?" Like no baby's ever been in the NICU before. My this is the most precious. But like the
Yeah.
NICU nurses are angels among us. I don't know how they do their
You
Yes.
always
job.
say that too.
I always say that too.
I
I'm
think they
still,
have to be. They're dealing with parents and babies that are so fragile and worry,
yeah, they are angels though. They were feeding me behind the curtain. They were like, they send me pictures even though I'm pretty sure they weren't supposed
you
to.
have to be pretty
They were great.
strong women or men to be a nurse in the NICU because I'm
I
sure
agree.
there's a lot of great stories, but a lot of
It's kind of like the antithesis of being like a hospice nurse. Like it's just a very challenging time and it
yes.
can be extremely rewarding and also extremely painful.
Yes.
When we were in the
They're the
NICU,
best.
they moved us to the peds floor because they were
Mhm.
like, "Oh, there's visiting hours," and we were like, "Oh, you're cute. We're not here to visit our kid. Like, we're gonna be
We're
with
not
our
leaving.
kid."
You're like, we live here too now.
Right. So
Hello,
I'm like,
baby.
"Where's that?" And they were like, "Oh no, like the only way to do that is like if you're gonna hold him for 24 hours." I'm like, "Yeah, what else would we be doing? Our baby was born. Like, this is
Right,
wild
you're
to
like, lucky for you, I've cleared my schedule.
right,
But do people do
right,
other things?
right.
Well, some
What?
people do have, like, I understand the NICU people have like full-time jobs and
Some
not
people just
maternity
can't,
leave,
yeah.
so
But
it's not an
no,
option for everybody, but
we were prepared. Me and my
they're out of
wife
town. They
both.
have nothing else to do.
Right. We had to drive from Pennsylvania to Tennessee. We had prepared our employer, right? When you're going through the adoption process, the minute he's born, you're like, I'm out of here, right?
Yeah.
Well,
So,
and you have to stay in the state for ICPC, so it's
Right.
like you're already planning on being there for X
Everyone
amount of
knows
time.
it's coming.
Yeah.
exactly. So, that was like really challenging that moment. I will tell you, I have more respect for the Ronald McDonald House. Like, if I didn't do what I did today, I
Oh
would
yeah,
try
they're
to work
fantastic.
in the adoption field. And if I couldn't work in the adoption field, I'd try to work for the Ronald McDonald House. They housed my
Mhm.
family the entire time our son was in the NICU. But, like, when we were there, we got a room with Emerson because we said we'll hold him around the clock because they said that's the number one thing to help heal
Yes.
his active withdrawal is being held. That's
Yep.
easy
I love
breathing.
that.
They
So
have
Isn't
people
that
come in
just
as volunteers just to hold babies in
yeah,
the NICU who are going through
honestly, that
withdrawal.
should be my job.
It can
when
be.
we
A lot
were
of
there,
grandmas do it. Retired grandmas do it.
but it was
That's your
because of
that's your
COVID. They have a shortage. People don't do it anymore because of COVID, right?
Oh,
Yes, that makes sense.
So
How long was Emerson in the NICU?
Emerson was in the NICU for about a week, and when we were
Oh, not too
there,
bad.
the NICU was completely full, and we were the only parents that were there. There was not another parent that was there visiting their child in the NICU that was in active withdrawal. So there was over a dozen babies that were in active opiate withdrawal, and there was not a parent to be found. And this is common.
Yeah.
This is every day. And I like
Yeah, that's not
I
uncommon. We
feel
saw
for
that
these
too when we were in
nurses.
the
This
NICU.
was in Johnson City, Tennessee. They said this is in children's hospitals all across the United States. This is happening. This is so common that
Wow.
at that hospital, our night nurse adopted her son, and he was born in the NICU to a woman that was on drugs, and she didn't even realize she gave birth. There are babies in the NICU. The baby had no name. There are babies in
Yes.
NICUs all across the country that have no name and no parents.
well, this is
We
this is why I haven't known about this
well, we had a
because
situation in
I would be coming
Florida
home with babies.
where because of how it sounded, the baby was already born. All of our families kept saying no, and then we had one family finally. It was actually a gay couple on the East Coast, I want to say, but they flew down there, and within like a day of them arriving, they were told in advance we didn't know how long the baby was going to be in the NICU, and they weren't doing that well. They were discharged within less than 24 hours, and like all it said on the NICU chart was like get adopted. And so as soon as they showed up and they held that baby, the vitals turned around immediately, and within 24 hours
I
they were
think that is just
discharged.
so miraculous.
And I get chills every time I think about
Yeah.
it.
It's
Because like
crazy.
he's like, oh, my parents are here, I can go now. Like it's
Right.
so cool.
Right. And they kept saying, he needs a feeding tube. We need to wean him off using, what do they use? Morphine to wean them off. And
Oh, I
my
didn't know
wife,
that.
I
my
don't
wife,
know. We did not
yeah.
have that. I don't think.
And then they put you in, that's a 12-day commitment minimum. If you go that route, if you can't commit to being there holding them and you do the medical withdrawal, it's a 12-day commitment minimum because they do it and then they taper them off over the 10 days or
Oh,
something.
wow.
Oh
My wife was
yeah,
like,
that's
no, he's not getting a feeding tube. He's not getting medically withdrawn. Give him a minute. And that's like consistently her
Huh?
line is always like, give him a minute, he needs a minute. And that's
I
Yeah.
love that, actually.
what he needed. He persevered, and he has no signs of active being born with active addiction or being in active withdrawal from opiate addiction. He had a speech delay, but he's thriving. He's in school. And like, back to the original question of like what it was like building a relationship with Sydney, it was absolutely amazing. And we talked all the time, and she went from a complete stranger to somebody that I would like, if she didn't respond, I was like, did she change her mind? Right? My wife would be
Yeah.
like, I think we're getting scammed. Right?
I think that you are every family during the waiting period, because
Those
you
are-
want
yeah.
you want it to happen so bad, and then as soon as it does happen, you're like, this can't be real.
Yeah.
Question everything.
right. And then we had a meeting about it because we were kind of like, because she was not going to prenatal visits, and she said she would, and then she would not go. And we were like
It's nice that
disappointed.
you stuck with it though.
Yeah, and my wife was like, see, I told you we were getting scammed. And I was like, no, right? That's not true. Why would somebody scam us? That's like crazy, right? These people are backed, right? They know what they're doing. So then when we talked to Lifelong, we got, we have the details of the situation surrounding how Sydney got to where she was to make the decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having the context of the scenario, and like Lifelong literally had to kind of say in a nice way, this is the best experience of your life, and likely not one of the best experiences of her life.
I say that all the time.
Me too. I'm like, the hospital especially is crazy, because this is probably one of the greatest days of your life, and it's going to collide with one of the worst days of hers, and all that emotion is happening at the same time in the same place, and it's just a lot.
It was a lot. And when they said it like that, they were like, and like, it makes you think about care for women that are expecting as soon as they walk in. Are you so excited? Right?
And
Yes. We
No,
talk
I'm
about
not.
that too, how doctors' visits can be very, very demoralizing.
Or even strangers, right? When's it due?
Yeah.
right, because you're pregnant and they think that it's
So you're either having to tell them or remind them the choice you've already made, or you're having to lie.
Right.
and just
Or
go with
pretend.
it. Yeah. And the moment.
Pretend to get over it. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of families, one thing that I think are, when it comes to preferences, one of the things that they're always nervous about is the unknown that comes with being open to somebody that could be using substances while pregnant. What advice would you give to families that maybe are contemplating opening themselves up to that? What would you say to them?
I would say go for it. Because if you have a desire to be a parent and you have leaned into your faith that is the calling that you are to go forward with, you have to lean into it, and you have to trust the scenarios that were presented to you. So, for example, we did get 2 calls prior to Sydney picking us. We got, I don't know what its official title is, but it's the email about...
Oh, a situational.
Yeah.
We got 2 of those. And they were really bad, really super bad. Like some days, like, we don't know if this baby will ever leave the hospital, right?
So pretty severe cases.
Yeah. For context, these are situations that fall outside of typical boundaries, so we just want to double check before presenting a family, and we ask permission.
Yeah.
Right. So that happened to us twice, and I said, God is putting this on our heart. And my wife said, God's not putting that on your heart, Lindsay. They sent an email. Right?
And you're like, no, Lo.
Right.
It's on my heart. I feel it.
That's
okay?
her mom, wasn't it? I think that was your
No,
mom.
it was my wife. It was my wife.
Oh, I think so your mom, like, that's
This
even,
one's not on
that's
her
even
mom.
funnier.
No, I called my mom and tell her about it, and my mom's like, yes.
Your mom's like, you should have just picked one from the catalog, like I told you in the beginning.
Right.
Honestly,
So it's like, I think for me and like for others that I would say in this scenario is, what you're capable of, what you're equipped to handle and what you're not equipped to handle. For us, we believe that God would give us what we could handle. And I believe God presented us with that. Our birth mother was an active Suboxone user. It is not lost on me that my ex-wife is also an active Suboxone user. They
Yeah.
also
It's
share
funny
the
to
same
think that.
exact birthday, right?
Yeah.
So it's like God has a sense of humor, right? And like I truly felt super confident saying yes because I had a lived experience dealing with this type of substance abuse, right? I had a connection point, right? The other two scenarios that were provided beforehand, the situational emails, those were not experiences. And that's what my wife said. That's an email, Lindsay. They sent it to everyone on the list. You know, how did she interpret that? Because God wouldn't put that on our heart because we're not equipped and we don't have the skill set to support those scenarios. And so I think that when that happens, it can be really scary to remove all the preferences, especially relative to drug use or substance use. But I would say, like, be strong and anchor, and you know what you can handle. And God will give you what you can handle. Like, there were too many signs that I knew. No matter whatever happened in life, we were always going to be Emerson's mom. Sydney was always going to pick us. We could have went with a different adoption agency. We could have done it 5 years sooner. We could have pursued IVF. None of that would have came to fruition because we were always meant to be Emerson's moms, right? Like,
I believe that.
If you look at Emerson, he looks identical to my wife. People,
oh, that's cute.
When we go through security at TSA when he was first born, while we're waiting for the new birth certificate, we don't have the same last name. TSA said to my wife going through, this will make you feel safe flying, by the way. They said,
nothing makes me feel safe flying. Continue.
We don't need to see his paper. It's obvious you gave birth to him.
Because oh my God.
They are
person's watching.
No, I tell them all the time. They're like, "What do we travel with paperwork?" And I was like, "Well, my son is 10, and no one has ever asked me for anything." And one time I went through, and he wasn't even added on my ticket. He was a lap child at the time, and they're like, "Oh my God, we forgot him. Let's just add him." And I wanted to be like, "I could have gotten this child in the bathroom." But sure.
It's wild. So
it's
it's like situations
not
like
something
that.
to unpack while you're at the airport, though, because no one wants to deal with TSA in real time.
No. So, I think about that, and that's where it's like my faith is how I got here. And I will say, like, as someone who went through the adoption agency, nothing was more annoying to hear through the process. Like, lean into your faith. Your time will come. I don't want to hear that, right? And like, I'm so positive. So when we get on the calls, they would be like, your profile was presented to 39 people. And 11 people were interested. I was like, yes, that's one more closer to being Emerson's mom, right? That's how I looked at it. Like, yeah, more no's mean one step closer to yes. My wife is like, that's 11 people who thought we're terrible. Right?
I was just going to say, I know exactly what you're going to say about Lo.
Yeah, it's just different. Everyone's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have one last question for you, and it's probably the most important. I'm sure you'll have great advice, but what advice would you give to families that are thinking about adoption right now? What would you give, or going through adoption, what advice would you give to them? Marley, we don't need your advice.
We just wake her up a little and then she stops snorting for a minute.
Sorry. Yeah, so what advice would you give? Like if you had a friend or a family member going through adoption, besides telling them that their video is creepy, what advice would you give?
I would say don't make a creepy video. And then I would say right from the beginning, let me be real with you. The wait is going to piss you off. And every story that you hear about, oh, my friend is adopting, she got picked in 6 minutes. Don't listen to that. That has nothing to do with you. You know why? That's not your path. That's not your journey. Right?
Yeah. So, like the people out there getting pregnant immediately. And then some people it takes a long time. Like you just don't know what the timeline is for you specifically.
Yep. So don't listen to any of that. And I would say if being a parent is important to you, then I would remove barriers that are standing in your way. And for me, that was preferences. And
I love that.
we would never have gotten to Emerson because we were limiting our options, and Lifelong walked us through that on our touch point calls. And the only thing that I wish is that I would have been more open and receptive to that out of the gate. But because we were both so traumatized with our experience with active addiction, we were like very guarded. And so, it doesn't
Everything
matter.
worked out the way it was supposed to.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that those conversations kept happening though, and
Had you opened up sooner, it still would have led you to Emerson, because Emerson really truly was made to be with you guys.
And it happened when it needed to happen. You might have gone through a painful disruption even sooner. Like you just never know. So I think everything happens for a reason. But I love that advice in general, because I do think people sometimes get in their own way because of their preconceived notions of what they thought the family was going to look like.
No, that's actually great advice, and it's not advice that I always hear. Like, a lot of people will speak to the weight, like, keep yourself busy or whatever, which is great advice too. But I think it's great to tell people to remove any barriers that are stopping you from getting there. Katie always says this really cool thing when she's in meetings. She'll say, think about it like if a baby was to show up at your doorstep.
Oh, yes.
What would you, like, you wouldn't just be like, oh, I don't have the medical history of this baby, please take it.
Yeah, what is your line in the sand for parenting this child? When are you calling CPS, and when are you like, I will raise you?
Right.
Not that that's legal. I'm just saying, where are you really having a problem with this?
It just
when it's a real baby
in
front of you.
It makes you think about because everybody has, even when you're like you have a baby biologically, you're like, oh, I hope it has, mom's eyes, or,
I love when people say 10 fingers, 10 toes, because my son was born with an extra thumb, so I'm always like, totally.
Nothing wrong with that.
Wasn't our experience at all, but okay. Right. We're like, are you sure 11 fingers isn't better?
But I really love that advice, Lindsey, and I just thank you so much for sharing your story. I think it was, you had a pretty unique story with, what you dealt with, and then obviously the grief that you're dealing with Sydney passing, and
yes.
But Emerson is almost 4? Going to be 4 in
turning 3 on November 2nd. He'll be 3.
3. Gosh, that's so crazy. But I thank you so much. You have to share pictures. Email me some pictures.
And email us the link for the contest so we can.
Oh yeah, and email me the link for the contest.
Make this kid famous.
Oh yeah,
I'm gonna give you our best too.
Yes, say hi to Lo.
I'll send the link. You have to circulate in the office. It's by 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. He's moving to the finalist round because he's the best baby and should win, obviously.
Listen, if he wins, I'm going to say that it's because of Lifelong, and we're going to advertise, hey, work with Lifelong if you want a Hasbro baby.
Right.
The end.
Okay, I agree, and I see a partnership in the future.
Well, I always say adopted kids are the cutest kids.
Honestly.
Yeah. So I will say, though, you saw our email. Our email was set up for our adoption and like our wedding, right? So it's Lindsey and Lo, and she goes, "Oh, I saw that you signed up to be on a podcast." I go, "Yeah." She goes, "I noticed you didn't ask me." I go, "That's your own if you want to do it." I think it's cool though, because what I will say about it's the first experience that I've ever had in life where 2 people are going through the exact same thing, and our experience is completely different. Lo will tell you, when we got the call that we got picked, she started bawling her eyes out. And I was like, why are you crying in your jambalaya? You should be like jumping for joy. But our experience was not the same.
Stop it. I'm putting that on a shirt. Why are you crying in your jambalaya?
I don't know if I mentioned I'm from Louisiana, but...
Yeah. Right. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Lindsey, truly, for taking the time to talk with us and literally giving me the best hour that I've had all day. So...
Yes.
You're the best.
I want to hear about your Disneyland wedding, so please also reach out later.
So we're going to be talking
to you later about that too. I want photos and areas and everything. Yay. All right. Bye. You too. Bye, Lindsey.
She's the best.
Yes. Oh my God.
Marley.
So funny.
I'm glad you had your debut. You look like it really tuckered you out.
Marley Potato Snores a Lot did a really good job, I thought, on her first podcast.
Definitely.
I rescued her so that Jordan would look less stressed out when she was walking around on her own.
You have to comment and let Lindsey know that you also want to hear about the Disneyland wedding.
Oh, yes.
Because we can do a whole podcast on that.
We'll do a slideshow. All righty.
Bye, guys.
Thanks so much. Bye.